Hello, students. Here is our final discussion of the awakening. This is what I was going to open our class with today, but the snow interfered. I wanted to make sure we finished our discussion of that pivotal scene in chapter 10 in the book. And this is the one where we have the music. Mademoiselle Reese plays music for Edna, and she has this sort of emotional response, and then they go out for the night swim. And there's this scene in chapter 9 where Edna is having this image that arises in her mind when she hears Mademoiselle Reese play, and she sees of this image of this solitude. When she heard it, there came before her imagination the figure of a man standing beside a desolate rock on the seashore. He was naked. His attitude was one of hopeless resignation as he looked toward a distant bird winging its flight away from him. So obviously this sets up the imagery that we had at the end that we talked about in our quizzes at the end of last week of the last class period of the bird with a broken wing. And we also have another image of this after Mademoiselle Reese plays. She comes up to Edna and she says, "You are the only one worth playing for." Mademoiselle Reese had finished. She arose and bowing her stiff, lofty bow, she went away, stepping for neither thanks nor applause. As she passed along the gallery, she patted Edna upon the shoulder. And it seems like this shoulder thing comes up many times throughout the narrative, and it also seems to be alluding to the idea of the wing. And so Edna says, "I've never been aroused like that before. Your music prompted such stirrings in me." And then they go out and have this swim in the night. She swims for the first time, and so this is chapter 10, and she has kind of this vision of death. And again, this all foreshadows the end. And she says when she gets done swimming, "How easy it is," she thought. "It is nothing," she said aloud. "Why did I not discover before that it was nothing? Think of the time I have lost splashing about like a baby." She would not join the groups in their sports and bouts, but intoxicated with her newly conquered power, she swam out alone. The unaccustomed vision of the stretch of water behind her assumed the aspect of a barrier which her unaided strength would never be able to overcome. A quick vision of death smote her soul. For the second time, appalled and enfeebled by her senses, but by an effort she rallied her staggering faculties and managed to regain the land. She made no mention of the encounter with death and her flash of terror, except to say to her husband, "I thought I should have perished out there alone." "You were not out very far, my dear. I was watching you." And so the husband is dismissive of this key moment in her sort of evolution, her awakening. But notice who does respond to her fully. It's Robert. He comes up to her and she says, "Did you think I was afraid?" she asked him without a shade of annoyance. "No, I knew you weren't afraid." "Then why did you come? Why didn't you stay out there with the others?" "I never thought of it," says Robert. "Thought of what?" "Of anything. What difference does it make?" "I'm very tired," she uttered complainingly. "I know you are." "You don't know anything about it. Why should you know? I never was so exhausted in my life, but it wasn't unpleasant. 1,000 emotions have swept through me tonight. I don't comprehend half of them. Don't mind me what I'm saying. I'm just thinking aloud. I wonder if I shall ever be stirred again as Mademoiselle Reese's playing moved me tonight. I wonder if any night on earth will ever again be like this one. It's like a night in a dream. The people about me are like some uncanny half-human beings. There must be spirits abroad tonight." "There are," whispered Robert. "Didn't you know this was the 28th of August?" "The 28th of August? Yes, on the 28th of August at the hour of midnight is the moon, and it is shining. The moon must be shining. A spirit that has haunted these shores for ages rises up from the gulf. With its own penetrating vision, the spirit seeks some one mortal worthy to hold him company, worthy of being exalted for a few hours into realms of the semi-celestials," and he goes on and on like this. And this is this sort of pivotal moment where the awakening occurs with Edna. And Robert isn't sure if he should stay by her, but he asks if he could, and she says, "Okay." She watched Robert's figure, pass in and out of the strips of moonlight. It was midnight. It was very quiet. When he returned with the shawl, she took it up and kept it on her hand. She did not put it around her. "Did you say I should stay until Mr. Pontellier came back?" "I said you might if you wished to." He seated himself again and rolled a cigarette, which he smoked in silence. Remember cigarettes versus cigars? Neither did Miss Pontellier speak. No multitude of words could have been more significant, those moments of silence, or more pregnant with the first throbbings of desire. When the voices of the bathers were heard approaching, Robert said good night. She did not answer him. He thought she was asleep. Again, she watched his figure pass in and out of the strips of moonlight as he walked away. So here, part of this interpretation comes from my dissertation advisor, Bert Bender, and it's in the article that's posted in today's lesson and in resources, his essay on the awakening called The Teeth of the Desire. And it appears as a chapter in this book, The Descent of Love. And one of the points that Bender makes is that he sees a very strong allusion in this pivotal scene between Edna and a famous section in Whitman's Song of Myself. And I've marked this passage in your own anthology because Whitman does appear at the beginning in Volume C. You can go to page 30 from Song of Myself, Walt Whitman, chant number 11. And let me pause here for a second and find it online. So here is the passage. 28 young men bathed by the shore, 28 young men and also friendly, 28 years of womanly life and also lonesome. Now, Edna is 28 in this part of the book, and it's remarked upon this being the 28th of August. So 28 is a very key element here. Which of the young men does she owns the fine house by the rise of the bank. She hides handsome and rich, dressed aft the blinds of the window. Which of the young men does she like the best? Ah, the homeliest of them is beautiful to her. Where are you off to, lady? For I see you. You splash in the water there, yet stay stock still in your room. Dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather. Remember, the pivotal scene in the last part of the novel is on her 29th birthday, when she has finally the consummation with Arobin, and she's opened up to the desire of his kiss. And we'll try and look at the language of that scene because it's kind of pivotal here. And then she goes and kills herself, after that, not too long after that, so on her 29th year. Okay, where are you off to, lady? For I see you. You splash in the water there, yet stay stock still in your room. Dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather. The rest did not see her, but she saw them and loved them. So in the Whitman chant, this lonely woman, 28 years old, becomes the 29th bather. She goes out into the water in her imagination, and she carouses with these young men. And many people read this passage as sort of an opening up to desire. So this seems to be what Edna is opening up to, what she's awakening to in this section, if there's this allusion to Whitman, as Bender and others see. Dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather. They did not see her, but she saw them and loved them. The beards of the young men glistened with wet. It ran from their long hair. Little streams passed over their bodies. An unseen hand, hers, also passed over their bodies. It descended trembling from their temples and ribs. The young men float on their backs. Their white bellies bulge to the sun. They do not ask who seizes fast to them. They do not know who puffs and declines with the pendant and bending arch. They do not think whom they souse with spray. So if there is an allusion to Whitman in this part of the book that is right before this pivotal switch, before they go to New Orleans and the awakening continues, the allusion might be one towards Whitman, who's a romantic poet, and he has this woman giving in to her imagination and her desires. And what I've been saying, and what others in the sort of naturalistic reading of the awakening have been arguing, is that what Edna awakens to, first and foremost, in this section of this video lecture that I want to share with you, is she's awakening to the impulses and the desires that are propelling us forward, which aren't really necessarily love, but something else, something Darwinian, something biologically deterministic. That's kind of what she's potentially giving into. And if there's an allusion to Whitman here, it might be ironic in the same way when she tries to read Emerson, also a famous romantic figure from American literature. She falls asleep when she's in New Orleans. Here we have the Whitman allusion, and it's ironic. This romantic view of desire and love and all this sort of stuff is maybe not going to pertain in this naturalistic universe where it really is just base animal instincts, something like that. Now, we don't really know if this is intentional, but it is quite interesting then if we have the 28th of August, we have 28 bathers, we have the 29th bather, we have in this book about Edna entering her 29th year, about to enter her 29th year, she's awakening to something. And in the 28th chapter of the book, we have this description of of Edna having this reaction to when she kisses Erobon. If you remember the scene, here's the scene from chapter 27. She says the thing about what Mademoiselle Reisz had said about the artist would have to be very strong. The bird that would soar above the level plane of tradition and prejudice must have strong wings. It is a sad spectacle to see the weaklings bruised, exhausted, fluttering back to earth. And this is, very naturalistic view. And then for the first time in her life, she leans in and they kiss. She clasped his head, holding his lips to hers. It was the first kiss of her life which her nature had really responded. It was a flaming torch that kindled desire. And then chapter 28, this reality of sex, a physical element, maybe not love in this case, is what's dawning on her. Edna cried a little that night after Erobon left her, and she wasn't sure why. Above all, there was an understanding. She felt as if a mist had been lifted from her eyes, enabling her to look upon and comprehend the significance of life, that monster made of beauty and brutality. But among the conflicting sensations which assailed her, there was neither shame nor remorse. There was a dull pang of regret, because it was not the kiss of love which had inflamed her, because it was not love which had held the cup of life to her lips. So that seems pretty overt there. It seems to be that part of what Chopin is addressing, that perhaps the reason Edna kills herself at the end is because she's holding out she hopes that there's love in this universe, but she's finding that she doesn't even really feel guilt about kissing Erobon. She's just responding to her desire. And is that a good or bad thing? Now, a few pages before this, we have this pivotal scene that I think addresses this issue completely. Before she kisses Erobon, in chapter 28, her response to it, we have in chapter 26, she goes to visit Mademoiselle Reisz, and she gets a letter, and she reads the letter, and she finds out that Robert is coming back, right? And here is such a key scene. Reisz says to her, "If I were young and in love with a man," said Mademoiselle, turning on the stool and pressing her wiry hands between her knees. She looked down at Edna, who sat on the floor holding the letter. "It seems to me he would have some grand esprit, a man with lofty aims and ability to reach them, one who stood high enough to attract the notice of his fellow men, like Léonce. It seems to me if I were young and in love, I should never dream of a man of ordinary caliber worthy of my devotion, like Robert." "Now it is you who are telling lies and seeking to deceive me," Edna says, "Mademoiselle, or else you have never been in love and know nothing about it." "Why," went on Edna, clasping her knees and looking up at Mademoiselle's twisted face, "do you suppose a woman knows why she loves? Does she select? Does she say to herself, 'Go to, here is a distinguished statesman with presidential possibilities. I shall proceed to fall in love with him, or I shall get my heart upon his musician whose fame is on every tongue, or this financier who controls the world's money markets?'" You see all these discussions we've had about the biological determinism and whether we really choose or not. It's all wrapped up in that statement. And she's saying at this point in the novel, Edna is saying, "I don't know why I respond to Robert. I'm sort of arguing with Darwin. I'm denying Darwin. I like him because of these things." "You're purposely misunderstanding, Moiraine. Are you in love with Robert?" "Yes," said Edna. It would be the first time she had admitted it, and the glow overspread her face, blotching it with red spots. "Why?" asked her companion. "Why do you love him when you ought not to?" Edna, with a motion or two, dragged herself on the knees before Mademoiselle Reisz, who took the glowing face between her two hands. What a scene, right? "Why? Because his hair is brown and grows away from his temples, because he opens and shuts his eyes, and his nose is a little out of drawing, because he has two lips and a square chin and a little finger which he can't straighten from having played baseball too energetically in his youth, because because you do, in short," laughed Mademoiselle. "What will you do when he comes back?" she asked. "Do? Nothing except feel glad and happy to be alive." And at this point in the narrative, maybe we have hope. She's finally admitting this love for Robert, but notice everything that she mentioned in that scene. Why is she attracted to Robert? They're all physical traits. It could be read this way. She still has not fully awakened. It's only in the birthing scene later that she's going to see what love really is and what its real purpose in this world is. We'll continue that discussion on with the next part of the video lecture.